What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into a live edition of the Cleveland Browns Report. Great to be hanging out with you guys here on a Tuesday afternoon. We're going to talk about some trade and free agent targets now that we have distanced ourselves from the NFL draft by nearly 2 weeks. As holy cannonball, Jeremy Stallman with a $100 super chat. Can I get my opening monologue out before Jeremy Stallman, ladies and gentlemen, strikes from deep? Jesus, Jeremy. I don't even know what to say at this point anymore. Every single time, you just take the words out of my mouth. Jeremy, you are the man, the myth, the legend. Now let's unpack what you wrote. First, I will say, whoever is out flying today, hold on to your seats. The weather out here has been crazy. But I would take a Deebo 19 trade, depending on what we have to give up. Keep up the great work. To everybody at Chat Sports, cheers to you, Petey. Let's go Browns. Dude, if Jeremy Stallman starts a football team, I will be the biggest fan of that football team. The Fighting Jeremys will be my new favorite team. Jeremy, thank you so much, dude. Here at Chat Sports, we've been grinding for the last, cooling off a little bit the last week. Now that the NFL draft is behind us, but Jeremy, let's effing go, dude. Spam Jeremy in the chat. Jeremy Stallman. I don't even know what to say anymore. And I say that every time, but Jeremy just has that impact on the channel. Jeremy, thank you so much, dude. As for a Deebo Samuel trade, it would be really cool. Not sure how likely it would be. It would be definitely cool. We could put it under the really, really cool file. And Andrew Berry likes to trade for good players, and I think Deebo's still a good player. Although last year, I think we saw some signs of the way he plays, he takes a lot of hits. And maybe those hits are starting to show. And Deebo's next team may regret whatever they gave up for him or kind of the contract they gave up to sign him. So that could be something to file back in the tickler file. But Jeremy Stallman, you're the man. You truly are. Thank you so much for all of your support of the channel, dude. Joshua Miller, next one up. Best piece of sports memorabilia anyone owns. I'll open this up to the floor. Any cool sports memorabilia? My dad's got a really cool collection.
I have my dad gave me a old helmet that's the original Jacksonville Jaguars logo before the Cars took their logo, and then I have an Oilers helmet, which is kind of cool.
I'm sorry. I read this orange tadpole. Jeremy Stallman puts his pants on 3 legs at a time.
That's amazing.
Jeremy Stallman.
That's so good.
I don't know if anyone's going to get this reference at all, but there's a guy who's in the Florida Everglades looking for a 20-foot Burmese python called Fishing Garrett, and his comment section is the best online, and that's Jeremy Stallman in my eyes. If anyone knows the guy I'm referencing, I think you'd appreciate that. Best sports memorabilia like I own right now. In my current apartment, I have a Philip Fulmer signed Tennessee hat. That would be towards the top of the list. My parents' house, I don't know what the coolest thing I have is. I got to get some cool sports memorabilia. That's my takeaway from this conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Jeremy Stallman with a $4 super chat back before we even started the live. Here's to all the 4 p.m. start. Let's go Browns. $4 for 4 p.m. start. Appreciate it. For Jeremy's wallet, maybe we should move to a 1 p.m. start. I think that would help. Next one. Here, $5 for 5 p.m. starts. 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Mountain Time. I think we're missing the 3. And then we've got 2 for Pacific. And then we got the whole U.S. coast. Jeremy should look into super chatting in China. Not quite sure what the YouTube legality is in China, but that's a country with 1 time zone. So that would do a lot of wonders for Jeremy Stallman's piggy bank. Jeremy, yet again, thank you so much. I've got a fun life announcement coming up next week, and Jeremy Stallman just helped pave the way for that being a little bit on the easier financial side come this time next week. I'll share that next week with you all. But shout out your city for me, though, in the chat. Let me know where you are tuning in from, as we are 9-10 minutes into the show, and I haven't even asked about you all. Been too busy talking about myself. Let me know where you're watching from. Tim Green has a Sandy Omar auto poster and a David Justice. Ooh, I like that one. We got Louisville, Ohio. I've got Stowe, Ohio. Ty Man, the Buckeyes in Ohio. Chris is in Canton, Ohio. So far, the first 4 people in the chat are from Ohio. Levi's from Erie, Pennsylvania. Cool Guy, where are you watching from? Cool Guy knows that guy. Tim Green's in Ohio. Kyle is in Cleveland. Josh in Michigan, but not working. Josh, what, if you don't mind me asking, what do you do for a living roughly? Like, you don't have to get too in the weeds if you don't want to, if you're an FBI agent, but I've always been curious about, like, you're always working at home every single, day, it sounds like, or at least every Tuesday, and for a stretch every Thursday. So I don't know. These things keep me up at night. Conan the Elf in Hubbard. Let's see. Tim's in Avon. Ty Man, Ohio is the better state. Oh, we're talking about Michigan now. Okay, I see. All right. What is the Browns' current NFL ranking? How would you scale it 1 to 32? Free agency is mostly done. The draft is done. So now that the big 2 pieces of the offseason are over with, the Browns improved where they were last year. I felt like last year, if just go off of like how far they made it, they were one of 7 teams to make, or 14 teams to make the playoffs. So they would be top 14. I think they have improved from last January to today, and that's mostly because of just getting healthy. Like, they're going to get guys back. Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson, both other starting safeties. Okoronkwo, they're going to get healthy. So if they were the worst playoff team last year, which they kind of looked like it based on the way they bowed out against the Texans, at worst you have them at 14. I think they're right there between like 9 and 12. That seems like an appropriate range. I lean more towards the 9 side, but I also want to see them, live up to it, improve it. So let me know what your current ranking is. Daniel says 7. Lil Beam has them at 15. Chris has them at 11. Josh, healthcare contracting. All right, now we know. Tim Green, 14 now, but if healthy, maybe better. That seems fair. That seems like par for the course. Now, coming up on today's show, we're going to look at some trade and some free agent targets. I started off at trade, and then I decided, you know what, there are some free agents out there that maybe Andrew Berry sets his eyes on. And then we're going to look at the Browns' offense and defense. And I ranked both units in the NFL, and I'll share with you where I had the defense coming in 1 through 32 and where I had the offense coming in 1 through 32. But we do have a mailbag at the end of the show, as always. So if you have any question at all you'd like to ask, hashtag Browns in the chat, and we'll throw it on screen for everyone watching to see. Or, like Jeremy, like Josh, super chat, and then we'll guarantee it gets on screen for everyone to see. So shout out to those two for going above and beyond to support us here. But if you're unable to super chat, not a problem. You know it's completely free. Like in the video. Hit the thumbs up button if you haven't already. We're at 22 likes. Can we get ourselves to 30 likes before we start the show? 8 more likes.
I'm hearing from the Steelers studio that they're going to come and raid the studio if we don't get to 30 likes.
I'll tell you what, the Steelers Talk channel is living in whatever world Alice in Wonderland was made in.
It is La La Land. It's unbelievable.
They feel like they are just entitled. They kind of think they're King George.
That
they're just going to walk into an NFL team's front office and we're taking that wide receiver. I don't think they understand that trades involve 2 teams. They're trying to trade rate, basically.
So far, Brandon Aiyuk, Treylon Burks, Deebo Samuel, all are Pittsburgh Steelers for sure.
And DK Metcalf. How can we forget? DK Metcalf has involuntarily been traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
He is a Steeler.
Can you give some shout-outs? I want to make one quick tweak here.
Absolutely. Let's get the F-Pits going in the chat. I see Ty Man saying it. I see Cool Guys saying it. Keep the F-Pits going because we all know who runs the division. Joshua Miller, $2 super chat. Thank you so much, my man. We'll pop you right up here on the screen, and we're going to show you some love right now. So Joshua Miller sent in a super chat. Will the NFL ever let Deshaun Watson win any awards? He's got to win one first. He's got to do something to win one.
Yeah, that'd be step one.
That's the first thing.
I think so. I mean, you're probably going to have some voters, AP voters, that just are sports writers, and they're pretty public as people that like to insert themselves into athletic achievements and make themselves the center of the story by writing a novel about why they didn't vote a guy into the MLB Hall of Fame because they made baseball more fun in the 90s. So I wouldn't put it past some sports writers to go like, no, morally I could never vote for that guy because of, the off the field allegations that were made. So will he ever? Maybe. Step one is he's got to earn it, like Trey said. Let's cross that bridge first.
Yeah.
And then we can start talking about how the NFL hates Deshaun Watson. But for now, I need Watson to actually show me anything that's worthy of an award other than Worst Trade of the Year award.
So get the F pits going. I see Joshua Miller saying it. If you hate the Steelers, if you absolutely despise Pittsburgh, I need you to type F pit in the chat. I mean, it's been a crazy day so far. We're not even 20 minutes in, and the super chat's been going crazy. The viewership has been going crazy. Everyone's just been having an all-star performance today. So shout out to you guys.
It has been awesome.
Josh Velador is saying F pit. Daniel Cleveland is saying F pit. Ty Man the Buckeye says F pit. Daniel Cleveland was born to be a Browns fan, for the record. David Kemper, F pit. I love to see it. I love to see it.
All right. I have what I wanted to change changed. If you guys want the full transparency, I wanted to get a new Fanatics item in. I felt like we've been talking about that one T-shirt for a little while. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to bore them with the same product. So let's shake it up indeed. And I meant to do that 2 hours ago, and then I forgot. So, voila.
Here
we go. Let's jump into some trade and free agent targets on today's episode. We're at 33 likes, so we can get the show on the road. So without further ado, we're going to welcome everyone to a live Cleveland Browns report so you can see how the sausage is made for all of our weekly videos we do here, daily videos we do here. On today's show, I want to run through some post-draft trade and free agent targets for the Cleveland Browns because this man right here loves to make a trade, loves to make a signing. He is one of the most aggressive GMs in the National Football League. And there's a pretty good track record of Andrew Berry after the draft not kicking his feet up going, well, I've done my part. Roster's assembled. Now it's up to the coaching staff to put it all together on the field. Now, take a stroll down memory lane with me for a moment. Last year, after the draft was over, the Browns signed safety Rodney McLeod, and then they traded for Za'Darius Smith a few weeks later. The offseason before that, they re-signed Jadeveon Clowney after the draft. They re-signed Dearness Johnson. And then back in 2021, they signed starting defensive tackle Malik McDowell. So you can see these aren't just like minor moves. I mean, we're talking about key rotational player / starter for half or a quarter or a third of the season a year ago. Darius Smith, a starter. Jadeveon Clowney, a starter. Dearness Johnson, really cool story. Malik McDowell, a starter. So there have been some sizable moves that Andrew Berry has made after the NFL draft. So let's start by looking at the Browns' own free agents, right? Sometimes you see teams prioritize certain players in the offseason, prioritize the draft, and then they know they can circle back on some of these smaller fish in May, June, July, and August. So looking at the list of 8 outstanding free agents for the Browns, one guy that I think has a chance to maybe come back would be Jordan Kunaszyk. The Browns let Matthew Adams walk in free agency. He was a core special teamer for Cleveland. So I wouldn't put it past the Browns to look at Kunaszyk as good depth at linebacker and good special teams value. So that could be someone they re-engage in talks with. Another candidate to come back would be Jakeem Grant, and I'll just type on my own thoughts for you all. Maybe for special teams. Like, we all know that unfortunately Jakeem Grant has missed the last 2 seasons with season-ending injuries in training camp. But if Jakeem Grant and the Browns agree to a super cheap 1-year contract, would anyone be blown away that the Browns are trying to be ahead of the curve when it comes to making impact plays on kick returns with the new special teams rules by getting Jakeem Grant and Naheem Hines back there? Possibility. Now, I've identified the Browns' biggest needs, I'll be honest, they don't have a lot of needs anymore. They have plugged every hole pretty much on this roster. They just need those guys to go out and execute at this point. But you can make an argument for linebacker if you're not sold on Devin Bush being the third linebacker on this team. Running back and offensive tackle, I put question marks next to because it's really dependent on the health of the current starters. If the Browns know Nick Chubb's going to be back by week 4, then they don't really need to go get a big guy running back, right? And if they know 2 out of the 3 starting tackles, or maybe even all 3, will be healthy and ready to roll for week 1, they don't need an offensive tackle. So that's why there's question marks next to them, because it's very dependent on the rehab of the current starters. Wide receiver, you know what? I put it on there just for you guys. I don't think it's that big of a need. I think adding Jerry Jeudy, drafting Cedric Tillman and David Bell the last 2 years, drafting Jamari Thrash, I think Andrew Berry is a lot more confident in this wide receiver room than certain sports talk radio hosts would make you think they are. So I think the Browns are much more confident in the core they have at the receiver department than your average Joe on the street does. I also tossed in cornerback. I was looking at the Browns depth chart, and they were really good at corner with Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, Greg Newsome, Cam Mitchell. I thought showed some good moments last year. They drafted a guy this year at that position, but maybe they view cornerback as such an important position, which that would be no surprise to me given how much investment they've made in it in the draft, where they feel like you can never have enough good corners. So if there's a good corner out there, we'd be dumb to pass on him given how important that position is and how often those guys get banged up because there's slightly smaller dudes trying to tackle NFL wide receiver and tight ends, and that can leave you with some, black and blues throughout the season. The Browns' biggest need, arguably, at this point, may not be any of those things right there. It could be just playmakers, right? It could be something where Andrew Berry goes, all right, it's May, getting bored, kind of getting that itch to make a splash, make a big move. And I want to go get a guy that's not going to bring in some solid depth at cornerback or linebacker, but a guy that can make some big plays for us. And so maybe he just looks over the entire free agent landscape, not specific to his needs, but guys he feels like are still starting caliber players, and he's a little confused as to why they're still on the street. Here are, in my opinion, the top 10 free agents remaining. And we are filming, by the way, on Tuesday, May 7th during our live show. So if one of these guys gets signed by the time you're watching this, just roll with the punches. But David Bakhtiari, who was one of the best left tackles in football up until some recent injuries. Yannick Ngakoue had an impressive streak of 8+ sacks for multiple years. Only had 4 last year up until a broken ankle cut his season short. Calais Campbell comes off a 6.5 sack season. That's the most for any free agent right now. Steven Nelson, Stephon Gilmore, and Xavier Howard, I think are all starting caliber cornerbacks in the NFL. I'm not really sure why they're still free agents. And then there are some just good safeties like Quandre Diggs, Eddie Jackson, Justin Simmons, Jamal Adams. I think Justin Simmons being a free agent is an absolute crime. He's led the NFL in interceptions since entering the league in 2016. And the other 3 guys, they may not be at their peak anymore, but I think they're still starting caliber players. Like Rodney McLeod was to last year in the Browns free agency signing pool, a really good quality depth piece. I think all those 3 guys outside of Justin Simmons, who is definitely a starting caliber player, are at least good quality rotational safeties when you see a lot of teams going to 3 safety looks this day and age in the NFL. Now, one name that's not on there, how about tight end Logan Thomas, former 4th-round pick out of Virginia Tech by the Cardinals. Bounced around the league a little bit, but the last 4 years he was with the Washington Commanders. And I feel like the Browns tight end room could use an extra player to it. Now, last year for the Commies, Logan Thomas, a little under 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, 16 games played. The Commanders' passing attack was abundant. I'm blanking on the term I'm trying to use here, but was no shortage of volatile. It was up and down, right? Sam Howell was awesome to start the year, and then he ended the year on a very cold streak, leading the NFL in interceptions. But Logan Thomas, I think, would insert himself as some good depth in this tight end room. If something were to happen to David Njoku, Do you trust Jordan Akins and Giovanni Ricci and a pair of UDFAs to hold down the fort? Maybe, maybe not. I would be a lot more confident if Logan Thomas was a part of that tight end room. Plus, last year, Ken Dorsey, he used a ton of 2 tight end sets. Now, that was in part because he had 2 good tight ends, right? Dawson Knox and first-round pick out of Utah as well. So he had 2 good tight ends to use, and that was a big reason why that they went to a lot of 2 tight end sets. And maybe he'd like to have 2, good tight ends to run with in Cleveland as well. So what position do you think the Browns should add to? Let me know in the comment section below. I think tight end would probably be like one of the few needs on this team. And that's really not because of anything about David Njoku. It's just about if something were to happen to David Njoku, I don't have a ton of faith in the backups in the tight end room compared to other spots on this roster. Now, next up on the show, I want to run through some Browns trade targets. Guys Cleveland could go after in the trade department because Andrew Berry has checked himself into trade rehab on multiple occasions, and it would not be a surprise to me if the Browns decided we need to go make a big trade. So we're going to go look at some potential trade targets because Andrew Berry loves to make trades. There is just no other way around it. We don't need to detail how many trades he has made ever since he became the Browns GM. He made one not long ago for Jerry Jeudy. He could be itching to make another one. So let's at least look at what draft capital the Browns have to work with for the 2025 NFL Draft. They are, lo and behold, back in round number 1. They have their 2nd, 3rd, 4th, no 5th. That belongs to the Vikings because of the Za'Darius Smith trade. But they do have 3 6th-round picks next year and a 7th. So here are 10 likely trade candidates. I've got Bears running back Khalil Herbert. They signed DeAndre Swift. They drafted Roschon Johnson. He could be RB3 in Chicago. Then you've got Niners wide receivers Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk. After the Ricky Pearsall draft pick from Florida in round 1, one of those 2 guys could be moved. DK Metcalf, there's been some very low-level chatter. I'll toss him on there, but I would be very surprised if he's traded. Tee Higgins, if the Bengals can't reach an agreement on a deal and a team gives them a really good offer, maybe they take that trade instead of having 1 year of Tee Higgins' services. Courtland Sutton is in a semi-casual holdout over a contract dispute. Maybe that escalates, although I think Cleveland traded for their preferred Broncos wide receiver. Treylon Burks, the former first-round pick out of Arkansas, we'll touch on him more. Jonathan Allen would have made a lot more sense if the Browns didn't draft a defensive tackle and then sign 3 defensive tackles in free agency. Saints cornerback Marshon Lattimore has recently gained some traction in the NFL trade rumors world. I don't think the Saints are going to move on from the former 11th overall pick, but maybe if something starts to boil down in the Big Easy, he could be available. And then Cardinal safety Budda Baker, he's entering the last year of his contract. And if a team overpays for a safety, wouldn't be surprised if Arizona goes, we could trade Budda Baker and then sign one of those other free agent safeties PD just talked about. That could be a win-win for the team in the desert. Now, before we talk about which of those players I think the Browns have a decent shot at for trading at, I want to share with you guys an awesome deal right now with our friends at Fanatics. They've got Jerry Jeudy jerseys available. So if you want to get the Broncos' new wide receivers jersey, go to chatsports.com/Jeudy jersey. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. But get yourself a Jerry Jeudy jersey today. That way you can show up to the first Browns game in style with one of the newest members of the Cleveland Browns. Now, one guy I want to show you guys is Khalil Herbert, because I think of the 10 names we just looked at, if I had to pick one the Browns trade for, it may be the former starting running back for the Chicago Bears, who has dealt with injuries the last 2 years, but has put together some really strong averages. Like, the guy averages nearly 5 yards a carry. I've liked what I've seen out of him in Chicago, and he's kind of fallen out of favor in the Windy City, and the DeAndre Swift signing, 3 years, $21 million, to me signals they plan to give him the rock a ton, which means Herbert could be available. And I only think this trade could happen is if come training camp time, the Browns are looking at their running back depth chart and they're thinking to themselves, we haven't seen spectacular play from Jerome Ford or Deontay Foreman and it's not looking like we're going to get Nick Chubb back in the near future. We tried to wait it out. We wanted to be patient. We wanted to give Chubb the opportunity to prove and show us he can be back before Halloween. That's not looking likely, and we're not seeing great play from Ford or Foreman. So if we don't plan on having Chubb for the next month, 2 months of the season, let's go bring a guy like Herbert in to make this more of a committee backfield. Another person maybe the Browns could be interested in is former first-round pick out of Arkansas, Treylon Burks. 6'2", 225. He was supposed to be the next poor man's Deebo Samuel. Yards after the catch monster. Really tough to bring down. Huge target to throw to with some good speed to go along with it. And it just hasn't gone to plan in Tennessee. He's played 11 games in back-to-back seasons for the Titans. His career stats look like an underwhelming season alone stat line for a first-round pick. 49 grabs, 665 yards, and 1 touchdown. Now, I could see Andrew Berry specifically having interest in Treylon Burks, especially after the Titans have signed 2 wide receivers in free agency so far, in Boyd and Calvin Ridley. Maybe Andrew Berry looks at Treylon Burks as, hey, that's round 1 potential. And for a team that hasn't had a first-round pick the last few years, we'll trade a bag of chips for him if the Titans are ready just to move on from him and just, wipe their hands clean from what was an awful trade by the previous head coach. Well, no, I won't actually associate Vrabel with it at all. Vrabel hated the trade. It was the Titans' last GM, John Robinson, who dealt A.J. Brown to the Eagles for a first-round pick during the 2022 NFL Draft. And that essentially cost him his job. He got fired pretty much as a result of that 18 or so months later. But maybe Barry looks at that as, hey, I see a guy that could be a really good wide receiver in the future for us. And as Amari Cooper enters the contract year, so does Elijah Moore. We could get a guy who we don't have big plans for in 2024, but maybe in 2025, 2026, just like how the Broncos were ready to move on from Jerry Jeudy and Andrew Berry swooped in, maybe he does something similar with Treylon Burks. So if you're to pick a trade for one of the 2 guys that I talked about specifically, who would it be? Khalil Herbert or Treylon Burks? I would go with Khalil Herbert. I think Treylon Burks is just bad, right? I just don't think he's going to work out in the NFL. I think Khalil Herbert, if the Browns need some help until Nick Chubb returns, could provide a really good 3-horse back with Jerome Ford, Deontay Foreman, and Khalil Herbert. So I would go with the Bears running back. All right, let's go with Trizzy Trace now to pick a card. Who did the Bills draft out of Utah? Dalton Kincaid. Sometimes I can't remember a name during the video, and I come across as the biggest casual.
Yeah.
And then 10 minutes later, it pops in my head.
See, I mean, it's always I have a really good comeback, but I thought about it 2 hours later.
Yeah, I've been there before.
Be like that.
And the funny thing is, when I've been on your side of the camera, I'm always critical of how can you not remember Dalton Kincaid's name?
Yeah.
And then when you're on this side of the camera and the lights are on, sometimes names
Very
just
different.
don't come to your head.
Very, very different.
Trace, which card do you want to go with?
I'm going to go 7 of spades.
7 of spades. Give me the 2 of diamonds. Jack of spades. Jack of spades. All right. That will do it for us on today's live show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Come hang out with us next Tuesday, by the way, if you want to be a part of a future Cleveland Browns report. What position should the Browns add to? What do you guys think? No one got it right, it looks like, either. That's too bad. Tim Green wants to sign, I thought it was Eddie Johnson. Different Eddie. Cool guy, hot take. Aiden Robbins takes the RB3 role right in front of Foreman and shocks the world. I don't think Deontay Foreman and Jerome Ford, let's say Nick Chubb, out the first month of the season, just for this argument's sake, and Ford and Foreman are your RB1, your RB2. That has to be the shakiest ground for any RB1 or RB2 in the National Football League. I think they have the most potential of losing their role on the depth chart compared to any other RB1 or RB2 in the National Football League. So I don't hate the hot take because it's got some legs to the possibility of the top of that room being up for grabs with Nick Chubb's injury.
I will say we need to get some more mailbag questions. Joshua Miller As always.
Oh,
Hold it down.
always leading the pack.
But
so,
I don't
cool
have
guy. I
anything
like
from
your
Jimmy.
turn your like hot take into like questions. Don't always have to have a question to it. It can kind of be a take too.
Yeah.
Like I think that's like in the sports world half question.
Or it could even be like hey, what about trading a 5th round pick for insert player?
Yeah.
Like you're going to be a trade idea. It's something too.
Exactly. So get your questions, trades, takes, ideas, whatever it may be in the chat right now. Just make sure to use #Browns. That way producer Trace can pull it from the chat. Our software can identify it and put it on screen for everyone to see. All right. Are we ready to jump into our next segment? So next up on the show, I want to go through the Browns' offense and defense and tell you where I rank them amongst all other 31 teams. So if we are ready for that, hit the thumbs up button. We're at 41 likes, trying to get to over 100 likes today. That was my goal, if you will, going into today's live show. Little close to halfway there, so hit that like button if you have not already. Coming up on today's show, I want to go through the Browns' offense and defense and rank them amongst all other 31 NFL teams and show you where I have them ranked and why I have them ranked there. Now, first, let's start with the defensive side of the football because, let's be honest, that's going to be a higher ranking than the offensive side, and I thought we could lead with some good news first. So, in my defensive rankings for all 32 NFL teams, I've got the Browns at number 1. And yeah, you could point to this as a bit of a homer take, but I've got some pretty good reasoning to back it up. I got the Jets, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the 49ers following suit. And then I've got the Texans all the way at number 6. They added a really good edge rusher, Danielle Hunter, and D'Amico Ryans has another year coaching up that side of the football. I've got the Steelers at 7, then the Lions, then the Raiders, and then the Cowboys. But I've got the Browns at number 1. They led the NFL in yards allowed last year in a good way, 270.2, the best since the 2014 Legion of Boom Seattle Seahawks, who only beat them by 3 yards. They also, very impressively, finished 4th in takeaways and 6th in sacks, despite playing the fewest snaps of any defense in football. I really want that one to sink in. That would be like leading baseball or being top 5 in baseball in home runs, and you're not even in the usual starting lineup. Like the opportunities the Browns had to force takeaways and record sacks were the fewest of any team, and they still finished top 6 in both categories. Extremely impressive given how few opportunities they had because all they were doing were forcing 3 and outs. And they also, by the way, are returning 9 starters. Now, here's why I love this Browns defense for 2024 and why I have it as the number 1 defense going into the season. They've got Pro Bowl talent at all 3 levels. Defensive line, linebackers, and into the secondary. Myles Garrett, of course, we know is a Pro Bowl All-Pro player. Za'Darius Smith has Pro Bowl potential to him. I think JOK is a Pro Bowler on the rise. Denzel Ward is a Pro Bowl cornerback. I think Grant Delpit, up to his injury last year, was playing at a Pro Bowl level. Now, JOK is the only one here that I think has to really prove himself as a Pro Bowler. The other ones have either gotten to that stage or they're a little bit closer, a.k.a. Delpit maybe a bit closer than JOK. But JOK last year, over 100 tackles, 20 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 interceptions. The guy was making plays all over the field, and most importantly, he was able to stay healthy. The Browns linebacker core is the only question mark on this defense, and if JOK plays at this level or better, it's not going to be a concern for this defense. Next reason I like this defense a lot is they battled through major injuries last year, and they still came out as the number 1 defense in yards allowed. And they're only going to get healthy. Like, look at last year's defense and the injuries these guys sustained and the games they missed. Myles Garrett did not miss any games due to injury. He did miss Week 18, but that wasn't because of injury. But he did, miss, he wasn't at 100% because of that shoulder injury he suffered in the Broncos game. But Okoronkwo missed the last 4 games of the season. And I'm including the playoffs in this as well. Maurice Hurst missed the last 5 games. Your starting middle linebacker, Anthony Walker, missed the last 6 games. Your best cornerback, Denzel Ward, missed 4 games. Your 2 starting safeties missed a combined 11 games. And then your backup safety for your 2 starting safeties missed 7 games. So you're down your top 3 safeties, your number 3 pass rusher, one of your rotational defensive linemen, your starting middle linebacker, and then your number 1 corner missed a quarter of the season as well. And on top of that, Myles Garrett, who refused to miss any time, was still playing at a dominant level up until his shoulder injury, where even afterwards, he was very impactful, but just not maybe the most productive player in the box score when it came to sacks and tackles for loss. But you look at what he did weeks 1 through 11 up until his injury, 13 sacks. The guy was on pace for about 22 sacks that season. He does not have a shoulder injury. I think he finishes with way more sacks than he did. Now, speaking of Myles Garrett, he's also the reigning defensive player of the year. Like, you have the best defensive player in the game on your team right now. That alone should get you near the top 5 of NFL defensive rankings. And for all the other reasons I'm about to list and I've already listed, they're number 1 in my eyes. But Myles Garrett comes off a 14-sack season, 4 forced fumbles. He basically showed you in that Colts game he's not even from this planet. The guy can block field goals. He can record sacks. He can take down quarterbacks and force fumbles. He can make plays all over the field, or even in that Bears game. Like, it's a very minute play, but he comes up with a huge tackle for loss towards the end of the game that stalls the Bears offense and allows Cleveland to hold on to win. Now, when we talk about Myles Garrett, I am just going to go out right now and say 2021 to 2027 is probably prime Myles Garrett. That is the ages of 25 to 31. So when you look at the NFL all-time sack leaders, you can see that there is a history of, like, when they are in the zones of 25 to 31, they play some of their best football. And that's not a huge surprise. And I'm not sharing this information with you to have like a groundbreaking historical stat. Of course, when you're 25 to 31 and you're one of the best to ever, lace them up, you're going to be very productive in that range. But it just goes to show that even outside of those areas, outside of those ages, these players were still very productive towards the later portions of their career. But you got the reigning defensive player of the year in the prime of his career. Reason number 4, deep secondary. The Browns secondary is very deep in terms of the depth they have at cornerback and at safety. Like, when you look at the Browns cornerback and safeties, Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, I think they form a top 5 cornerback tandem. And then you've got Grant Delpit, Juan Thornhill, DeAnthony Bell, Ronnie Hickman, Rodney McLeod is back. Like, you've got a ton of depth at safety as well. I think safety is probably the best, deepest room on this roster. So the secondary checks the box. And then finally, you've got Jim Schwartz. I think as an NFL team, every team should be striving to get an old defensive coordinator that's not trying to go get an NFL head coaching job elsewhere, but instead just wants to sit back and dial up blitzes that kill the opposing quarterback. And that's where Jim Schwartz is at in his NFL coaching career. And I'm very thankful that he is spending that time of his career with the Cleveland Browns. So do the Browns have the number 1 defense in your eyes? Give me a yes or give me a no. Now, I do want to address some of the concerns I have with the Browns defense. Their red zone defense last year was pitiful. It was dead last in the NFL. They didn't spend a whole lot of time in the red zone, but when they did not come up with a lot of big stops. In fact, teams scored touchdowns over 70% of the time. I've got some concerns about the linebackers after JOK, like can Jordan Hicks and Devin Bush hold down the fort if JOK were to pop up with an injury, which he did the first 2 years of his NFL career. And then there's the whole defenses dramatically change from year to year. And allow me to demonstrate. What I did was I went back to the last 5 years before 2023, and I looked at the NFL total yards allowed defensive leaders and what they did the following season. So the 49ers were the NFL total yards allowed leader on defense in 2022. In 2023, they went to 8th. The Bills, 2 years prior in 2021, fast forward to the next year, 2022, you guys noticing the pattern here? They go to 6th. Rams, all the way to 17. Now, it's not apples to apples. Like, The Rams, they sold out for the Super Bowl, and it worked, and then they took a huge step back. The Patriots went from 1 all the way to 15. The Ravens were the best. They only fell a few spots from 1 to 4, but it is just very hard to stay consistent at the top of the mountain on defense. Whereas offense, if you've got the same quarterback, it doesn't really matter as much as who the other cast and crew members are. You can still stay super effective, as we are seeing with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, even without Tyreek Hill. They're not missing a beat. Defense, sometimes a fumble bounces your way, and it's a huge, difference maker in the game. And then maybe the next year, that same fumble bounces out of bounds and stays with the offense. And you don't get that huge takeaway, and you don't have that touchdown stopping drive as a result. So history tells us for defenses, it's hard to even stay anywhere near the mountaintop in back-to-back seasons. Next up on the show, I want to go through the Browns offense with you guys here and where I have them ranked in the National Football League, because it's not as generous as I have the Browns defensive rankings. But lo and behold, I've got the Browns offense coming in at number 10. And I want to explain why, because it didn't look like a top 10 offense last year, right? The Browns definitely treaded water at times with all the different quarterbacks they had. But I've got the 49ers at 1, Dolphins at 2, Chiefs at 3, Eagles 4, Ravens 5, Bills 6, Lions 7, kind of a surprise-ish. I don't know. They scored a lot of points, though. Cowboys 8. I put Texans at 9. They just, absolutely throttled the Browns the last time we saw these two teams face off. So couldn't put Cleveland ahead of them. But I've got Cleveland at 10. And here's why I have the Browns at 10. One, believe it or not, they ranked 10th in points per game last year, despite 5 starters going to injured reserve, and the Browns starting Deshaun Watson, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, P.J. Walker, Joe Flacco, and Jeff Driscoll. 5 different starting quarterbacks in 18 weeks, and they still finished top 10 in scoring. They also had a massive upgrade in the wide receiver room. Last year, they're starting 3 wide receivers: Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, DPJ. This year, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. I think we can all agree that is an upgrade. And they are returning 10 starters, so they've got some continuity building from year to year. But the elephant in the room is Deshaun Watson. Like, he is the difference maker in this Browns offense being top 10 or being, closer to bottom 10, right? And so far in Cleveland, there's been a lot of nitpicking, and there's been some good and there's been some bad. It hasn't all been great, but it hasn't been as bad as some Twitter warriors would want you to believe it is, despite them not watching any Browns games. But I am choosing to be a bit of an optimist for Deshaun Watson in 2024 because of when we last saw him, the guy looked like a quarterback that could lead an offense to being a top 10 offense. 432 passing yards between the Cardinals and the Ravens game, a perfect second half against Baltimore, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. So yeah, sue me for believing that the guy that we last saw will come back from his injury and pick up where he left off, as he looked like a man that shook all the rust off from missing all the time between his suspension and taking a year off with the Houston Texans. So let me toss this your way. Hypothetical stats for 2024. If Deshaun Watson were to complete 65% of his passes, throw for 3,700 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, would you sign up for this? Would you agree if you were told, hey, in or out on these being Deshaun Watson's stats for 2024? I'm pretty inclined to say in. Given the Browns' defense, if you can get that type of quarterback production and the defense you had last year, that is a Super Bowl contending team. So, yeah, I would play it safe and go with, sure, that's not one of Watson's best seasons of his NFL career, but that would definitely, ease a lot of nerves in Cleveland and be a huge sigh of relief. So I would go with in. Now, the X factor for the Browns is Nick Chubb's return. If Nick Chubb comes back and is on an absolute warpath and a revenge tour for Batman, then the Browns are going to be playing with house money, because you can get Deshaun Watson back to being one of the better passers and quarterbacks in football. You've got a really good receiving core with Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, and Jerry Jeudy. And to toss it all in, Nicholas Jamal Chubb running back to being a guy that averages 5 yards a carry. I mean, look at his last 4 seasons. And he was playing at a very high level, and albeit a very small sample size, a game and a half against the Bengals and the Steelers, but still averaging over 6 yards a carry. He looked like a man that was going to have the best year of his NFL career and lead the NFL in rushing, and still a very small 28 sample size carries. But the AFC North, the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Ravens, they should absolutely be praying that Nick Chubb does not return to a level where he looks like a comeback player of the year. Because if so, it's game over for them. Toss in Deshaun Watson bounce back, just improvement. Nick Chubb, really a big bounce back year. The Browns wide receiver room having 3 very special guys in Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. And we haven't even gotten to the offensive line yet. Yeah, that's why I think this Browns offense could be top 10 for all the reasons we just went over. I've got high expectations for Jerry Jeudy. I think he's going to be a lot more of a factor in this Browns offense than he was in the Broncos offense, because I think partially Denver did not utilize him correctly. He was never a good fit for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson loved to hold on to the football and chuck it deep, which he did with Doug Baldwin, and then to Tyler Lockett, and then to Courtland Sutton. But that was never Jerry Jeudy's forte. Jerry Jeudy likes to get the ball in his hands as soon as he can and does damage with the ball in his hands, yards after the catch with his elite speed. And that wasn't something that Russell Wilson ever leaned into for a strength of his. It is up to the Browns to lean into that strength and not make the same mistake that the Broncos did. But hopefully that is why Cleveland pursued Jerry Jeudy for so long, because they looked at him as a guy that was not being used correctly, trying to shove a circle into a triangle. And in the Browns offense, they need a triangle, and that's Jerry Jeudy. And I think he's going to have a really strong year. And then there's the offensive line, which I'm saving maybe the best for last. Like, it's a top 5 offensive line in football. Joel Petonio, Wyatt Teller, Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber players. You get Jack Conklin, Jed Wills, DeJuan Jones back. And then there's Ethan Posick, who's quietly a top 10 center in football the last 2 years. So yeah, I've got no concerns about this offensive line when they're healthy. So do the Browns have a top 10 offense? I'll turn it over to you now. Give me a yes or no in the comment section below. There is definitely a lot of wishful thinking to take place here in order for this offense to be top 10. And I need a lot of the ifs that I said before to come true. But if they do, man, it's top 10. Let's bring on Trizzy Trace here to pick a card to wrap up the show. Trace, what would you like to go with?
Give me the 7 of hearts.
7 of hearts? I'm going to go with the 6 of clubs.
I like it.
6 of diamonds.
Oh.
6 of diamonds.
Oh, it stinks.
Ty Man the Buckeye got it right. 6 of diamonds. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. Hit me up on Twitter, by the way, at Matthew PD, if you want more Browns content on your stream and in your life. Ty Man the Buckeye. Way to go, dude.
Clap it up for Ty Man.
A little 2-clap action for Ty Man. A little 1-2. Attaboy, Ty Man. 6 diamonds. That's a good feeling right there. Ty Man's going to tell everyone about that, and no one's going to know what he's talking about. He's going to walk around his house tonight going, I got the card right. And everyone at the family dinner table will be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
But hey, he's going to be the best one at the table.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Mm-hmm. I like to think in Ty Man's basement because he's got all these chat sports viewing situations set up.
Yep.
He maybe even has the office layout and where people sit, kind of like when you're planning a wedding.
Yep.
And you get the little flags for where everyone is.
Yep.
I like to think he's got that going on.
I like to think that.
Oh, Damarama. Yeah.
Wait, what?
Damarama. Diorama.
Diorama. Yes.
Yeah. Wow, that
I
word
like to think of Ty Man of having all of the screens in a room, he's like a security guard in a dimly lit room, and he has 40 screens that are all chat sports. That's how I like to view my Ty Man the Buckeye.
Bingo. All right. Do the Browns have a top 10 offense? Let me know yes or no. Next up is a mailbag. So get your questions in right now. Use hashtag Browns in the chat, or you can super chat to skip the line and guarantee your question gets on screen. Hashtag Browns or super chat. Ty Man, I can't believe I got that. Is that your first time, Ty Man? Everyone remembers their first. Mine was King of Diamonds. Love the King. Love the King. Josh, appreciate your questions. Keep getting the questions in. Are we caught up on super chats? I think so. Okay, I couldn't remember if we got the very last one. So hashtag Browns in the chat right now. 90-plus people watching at the moment. So any question you've got following the NFL draft, don't be afraid to ask it. Just toss it in the chat right now. It may get on screen. Probably will get on screen. And we'll talk about it and break it down on our live show here. Lil Beam, appreciate you. I know Joshua Miller has been peppering the chat with questions. Joshua Miller, time to cook some dinner. Barbecue pork with mac and cheese. I like that. That does sound good, actually. I think it's a Wendy's night for me. I got trivia, which always means I get to pick up dinner on my way home. I love Wendy's.
Wendy's is sneaky good.
Dude, Wendy's has, not quietly, loudly climbed up my rankings of fast food.
I also think Sonic needs to get more love. I think Sonic's food is pretty solid.
Sonic overwhelms me. Too much going on.
I can understand that.
Like,
I can understand.
It's super cool, but like popcorn chicken is a side. I don't know how to compute that.
Yeah, just give me my, like, if they were just burgers, they have a couple.
I also had a bad Sonic experience. The last time I got it, I was driving down to Austin, Texas, and they had like a bacon peanut butter burger.
I've had that.
And I like the Elvis style burger.
Yeah.
This was not good.
Really?
Oh, it was awful.
Really?
I didn't finish it.
Interesting.
And that says a lot because I am the president of the Clean Play Club.
I haven't had the Sonic version of that, but I've had other ones, and they were pretty solid.
Tim Green does not like it. Tim does not like Wendy's. Whew. It's a Wendy's podcast. Wendy's should definitely sponsor us a little bit more for all that. Okay. Are we ready to get into a live mailbag? All right. If you got any questions that come to mind, hashtag Browns. And if you want to skip the line, super chat, and we'll throw it on for everyone to see. Mailbag time here on the Cleveland Browns Report, answering questions filmed during our live show Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Gator, what's going on? What do you think about swapping Greg Newsome for Marshon Lattimore? Interesting thought. There has been some trade buzz surrounding Marshon Lattimore potentially getting moved. And then there was a lot of discussion about Greg Newsome getting dealt, although I never thought that had much legs to it. Surface level, I'm like kind of interested because I'm not going to argue that Greg Newsome is better than Marshon Lattimore. But of course, this would come at a price of how many draft picks going back to New Orleans, because there's no way New Orleans does this like player for player swap without getting some level of a day 2 draft pick in return. Now, Newsome last year, I think, had the best year of his NFL career. And I know that the Texans game left a sour taste in everyone's mouth, and everyone is dying to move on from Greg Newsome. But I'm not. Like, I think Greg Newsome is a starting caliber cornerback in this league. And I was very happy the Browns picked up his 5th-year option. Gives you starting caliber cornerback play for, 5 years of his beginning career. And put together with Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson for, 4 out of those 5 years? So I'm very content with keeping Greg Newsome. But if Marshon Lattimore was truly available and the Browns could swap a corner for a corner and maybe kick a 3rd-round pick to the Saints, yeah, I'd probably take them up on that offer. For the Browns, they get a surefire thing in Marshon Lattimore. A Buckeye comes back to the Buckeye State. And for the Saints, maybe they get a draft pick and they get to go a little bit younger at the cornerback position. So it could be a little bit of a win-win for both sides. I think the Browns would probably win this trade a little bit more than the Saints. Marshon Lattimore is still playing at a high level. So I would do it, and it's nothing against Greg Newsome. I just think Marshon Lattimore is a better player. No disrespect. And if Greg Newsome continues to play the way he's playing, I think the Browns would be happy to keep him as well. All right, Joshua Miller, next one up on the show. Hot take. Rodney McLeod gets cut with how the young safeties played last year. That is a hot take, hot-ish. I didn't see the need to re-sign Rodney McLeod. I felt like DeAnthony Bell and Ronnie Hickman showed us last year that they are very capable backups and borderline starters in this league. So the Browns have a big role for the safety room. I think they're going to have a lot of 3 safety looks, so they want some depth at those positions. But safety is not a spot that you rotate guys in and out of, right? Usually your safety, as long as you don't get injured at all, plays every single defensive snap in the entire season, like Grant Delpit did 2 years ago. So I could see a world where Rodney McLeod gets pushed out by some younger guys, but I think the Browns bringing back Rodney McLeod shows us that they've got a big role for him on this team as a leader, and they're not going to let a younger guy replace him. Josh, what's going on, dude? Josh, different Josh. 5th for Kittle. Oh, 5th round pick for... No, stop it. George Kittle was a 5th round pick himself, so, I mean, no. I think George Kittle, if the 49ers truly were forced to trade him, would go for a first round. Maybe a second or first round. Late first, early second, and then like another day 3 pick in return. So you're not getting George Kittle for anywhere near a 5th round pick. Sorry, dude. Lil Beam, Petey, I don't think the Browns have good depth behind David Njoku, and I'm not sold on Devin Bush. And that is why I think the Browns should sign Logan Thomas and Bud Dupree to cheap 1-year deals. Let's start with David Njoku in the tight end room, and then we'll get to Logan Thomas, or then we're going to get to Bud Dupree and the edge rushers. I'm not against this idea that Lil Beam proposes here of adding some extra depth behind David Njoku. The Chief has not been an injury-plagued player throughout his career. Like outside of that, what was it, 2018 season with the wrist injury, 2019? He has been relatively healthy for much of his career. But still, I too share your concerns about the lack of depth behind Njoku. And I just want to take this moment to remind you guys that this is a great spot for Browns fans to be in. To be like complaining about depth at the tight end position. Where in previous years they were complaining, and rightfully so, about just getting good quarterback play from the starter. So the fact that Browns fans have graduated to bitching about backups is a very good place to be in. Trust me. As for Bud Dupree, had 6.5 sacks last year, if I remember correctly, for the Atlanta Falcons. I don't hate the idea. I'm not quite sure what the fit would be with him in a 4-3 defense. He's always been in a 3-4 defense from Pittsburgh to Tennessee to Atlanta. So I'm not quite sure how effective he would be in a 4-3 defense where he's got a lot more coverage responsibilities like Devin Bush will. But I wouldn't be surprised if Andrew Berry wants to add another pass rusher. He did that last year with Za'Darius Smith. I don't think it's likely, though. I think Logan Thomas has a much better chance of being signed than Bud Dupree. Cool guy. They need to hurry up with the schedule. I'm excited to see who the Browns face in the 2024 season. Should I try and just raw dog the Browns schedule right now on air? This is not going to make for good radio, but screw it. Let's do it. Browns home and away opponents for 2024. Okay. I think the Browns are going to be home to begin this. I can't do the whole season. Home to begin the season. I don't think they'll do another divisional game because they did that last year. So, non-home divisional matchups. You've got the Chargers, Chiefs, Cowboys, Giants, Dolphins. Rule out the Chiefs. They're going to be home themselves week 1. That leaves Chargers, Cowboys. They're not sending Dallas to Cleveland week 1. Dallas always plays at home or at New York week 1. So rule out the Cowboys. So you got the Chargers, Giants, Dolphins. I kind of feel like Giants. That seems like that's a weird week 1 matchup. You always get some weird week 1 matchups. I like the Giants for some reason week 1. That's my prediction. All right, before we get to the rest of the questions on today's mailbag, Jerry Jeudy jerseys are available at Fanatics. If you want to go get one right now at chatsports.com/Jeudy jersey. I'm the king of what I call second jersey guys. Everyone's going to have the mainstream quarterback, star defensive player jersey for any team, Myles Garrett, Deshaun Watson, and you can't really gauge someone's level of fandom if they have a super vanilla jersey. If I see someone wearing a Jerry Jeudy jersey, I'm going to give that guy a lot of street credit because I know that's a diehard fan that's not going for a basic cookie-cutter jersey. So if you're a diehard Browns fan and you want to get a more than just a basic jersey like Joshua Miller, guy's got a Cade York and a Martin Emerson jersey, go to chatsports.com/Jeudy jersey. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. Jeremy Stallman. Hey, anyone flying Southwest Airlines next couple of months? If so, if you see me, please say hello. Jeremy Stallman is our best friend up in the sky. So if Jeremy is working with you on a Southwest flight, you are in good hands. Joshua Miller, next one up. Amari Cooper. Oh, no. Here we go. Amari Cooper for DK Metcalf. Don't want to move on from Cooper, but just throwing that trade idea out there. All right. I don't hate the idea. Like, I don't hate you tossing out an idea. I don't love the idea, though. I think Amari Cooper is here to stay for 2024, and I think beyond too. I think Andrew Berry was very selective with his word choice at the NFL owners meeting when he hinted at an Amari Cooper contract extension. When Berry has a track record of never talking about players' contracts, he did that with Cooper. I think the draft is over now, and he's going to prioritize an Amari Cooper contract extension. So it's a fun idea. Don't get me wrong, Josh. I'd rather have Amari Cooper than DK Metcalf for 2024 and 2025. Christopher Stofira, how crazy is it that Cleveland is predicted as last in the division this coming season? Somewhat related to Christopher's question here. Does anyone else have some decent level of concern for Joe Burrow specifically and his injury? Like, Deshaun Watson's not coming back from a, walk in the breeze shoulder injury. But Joe Burrow is coming back from a serious wrist injury that, similar to Watson, there's not a lot of precedent for quarterbacks suffering that injury. But Watson's rehab seems to be going a lot faster than Burrow's rehab is. And Burrow always seems to start off the year dealing with some nagging injury. And I have seen that, catch them in the derriere. So I think the Bengals are looking at another bottom placement. I think the Steelers get last. I think it goes Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Steelers. That's my prediction for the AFC North. Joshua Miller, how many spots are truly up for grabs after signings, extensions, the draft, etc.? Josh, do you mean like spots, starting spots? Help me out for a moment here, Josh. Starting spots after the draft? I think if we're looking at starting spots for week 1, Devin Bush at linebacker, Jerome Ford at running back. Those are the only starting spots I think that are up for grabs, really. As long as that's what you mean, Josh. I mean, you can look at the top remaining free agents here. Again, any spots? Any spots on the 53-man roster. Okay. I mean, here are the top remaining free agent targets and then some of the top trade target candidates as well. Again, we're filming this on Tuesday, so maybe a name or two from either one of those lists is no longer available. But remaining spots, I would say of the 53 guys that make the roster, there's probably only about 5 up for grabs. You can quickly just wipe out 22 starters on offense and defense, and that's almost half of them. And you get to the other half with punter, kicker, long snapper. Now we're at 25. So then everyone's got one primary backup, and those are pretty much set in stone. I would just go off ballpark here. There's 5 spots where I think at this present moment, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski could not say with absolute certainty who gets those spots. Josh, appreciate the question, though. Trizzy Trace, let's bring you on screen to pick a card to wrap up the show.
I'm going to roll with the 7 of Hearts.
7 of Hearts?
Yep.
Let's go with the 6 of... No, 6 last time. Give me Jack of Spades. Jack of Spades. What'd you say?
7 of Hearts.
7 of Diamonds!
No!
7 of Diamonds.
Come on!
That is tough scene right there. Cool Guy and Ghostface were the closest to it in our live chat. All right, boys and girls, that will do it for us on our mailbag today. Hope you enjoyed our content. If you did, like the video, subscribe, all that good YouTube cliche stuff, and we'll see you next time. That was close. They did not hear 3 diamonds. Sorry, muchacho. Both of us. Back iron. Mean. Tempting.
The cards giveth and taketh.
Yep. We got Buddy Bear in the chat, by the way. Lord Buddy Bear, Raiders legend. How much for Buddy Bear to super chat to drag Mitch on here to do a boot? No, I'm not going to. Mitch puts his body through the ringer every single time he goes live. Buddy Bear, appreciate you hanging out with us, though. Always good to see Chat Sports legends in different live chats. Lord Buddy Bear, I like Metcalf better, more consistent. Some days Cooper shows up, some days he don't. Buddy Bear, I kind of feel like that's the exact opposite. I think DK has days where he doesn't get a target in the first half of a game. Amari Cooper, I feel like, is the more consistent player. In fact, let me let me do some advanced analytics here. Amari Cooper last year. Games with 50 or more yards, let's say. Okay, game logs. We'll do the last 2 years. Make it a little bit bigger sample size. Amari Cooper the last 2 years. 2 years with the Browns. How about that? Make it nice and simple, too. 2 years with the Browns, he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 games over 50 yards for Amari Cooper. Remember that number. DK Metcalf the last 2 years. Games over 50 yards. Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I was wrong. I thought Amari Cooper would have him on that one. Hand up. I doubted Buddy Bear. That's my bad, bud. Okay. Trivia. Final trivia question is Dallas sports related.
Ooh.
So that's not as exciting. What is another trivia question I have for tonight? What's the name of the building on the back of the $100 bill?
Is it the Washington Capitol?
Is not the Capitol.
Or the monument?
Not the monument. It is. I'll give you guys like 5 more seconds.
I'm trying to remember which building it is.
It is Independence Hall in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I would have gotten that wrong.
Benjamin Franklin.
That makes sense.
Right?
That makes sense.
Philly on the back. Another question. I had a good sports one. Which came first? The Olympics were split. The Olympics did their final year of summer and winter in the same year before they graduated to it being every 2 years. What came first, that or the Bills made their 4th Super Bowl?
I'm only gonna say Bills winning their 4th Super Bowl because it feels like the obvious answer is the Olympics one.
Olympics came first.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Olympics in 92. Bills made the last Super Bowl of theirs in 94.
Oh, wow. It's actually a lot closer than I thought.
Yeah. All right. That will do it for us. The funny thing about the trivia questions is I spend all night making them, and then I just forget them. I feel like I had some other good ones, but now I can't remember. Didn't like that question, but I'm just going with it anyway. All right. That will do it for us on today's live show. Special thank you to Jeremy Stallman for being the Super Chat MVP of today's show. $100 Super Chat. Jeremy Stallman is undefeated. I mean, I don't think he is like the UFC welterweight. He's the UFC champion for every single weight class.
Absolutely. The
every weight class.
Undisputed champion.
Jeremy Stallman is a combination of peak Nick Saban, Alabama.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick, Patriots.
What?
Celtics.
What?
When they won 10 in a row. And then we'll go with the
18-0 Patriots.
The Islanders winning 4 in a row.
I love it.
Yeah, that's Jeremy
I love
Stallman
it.
rolled into one. And you can find him up in the air with Southwest Airlines. All right, that will do it for us on this edition of the Cleveland Browns Report. Once again, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us during our live show. We will sign off, and I'll see you all later.